Hey, Greg here, founder of Wrestling-Divaz.webs.com, dedicated to highlighting the most beautiful and deadly entertainers in professional wrestling. Trained by the likes of George South and Amber O'Neil, my next special guest is a professional wrestler who, although young in her career, has already faced off against the likes of former WWE Divas and Women's Champion Mickie James. I'd like to welcome Amanda Rodriguez. Hi, Amanda. How are you today?
I'm doing really great. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for joining me. So we were talking earlier before the interview, and this week is a big week for you and several other ladies of the Shine Wrestling roster because they have their next show coming up. I always think that Shine shows are very solid and consistent as well, and I've seen a couple of shows here and there throughout the years. But for those who are unfamiliar with the program, can you let everyone know what the Shine product is all about and why they should buy the IPPBs, which are on sale, of course, or the DVDs?
Yes, the Shine shows are amazing. We bring in only the best women wrestlers in the country and occasionally from around the world. I am now with Evilise. Evilise is now rehabbing and straight back from her injury, and she is going against Santana for the title this weekend, and I will be right by her side helping her out. Hopefully she'll get that title, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. And from what I understand, you also bring in some former WWE and TNA alumni like SoCal Val, and like you said, it's Santana. So it always is a good show, and I wish you the best of luck. It's this Friday, I believe, correct?
Yes, absolutely. So I need everyone to tune in for sure on WWNlive.com.
So for everyone who may be unfamiliar with your work or who haven't heard of you yet, going to the beginning of your career, what would you say was the defining moment that made you decide to want to become a wrestler? Because everyone kind of goes through this phase of maybe you're a fan growing up, and then you just say to yourself, okay, this is what I want to be when I grow up. So walk me through that moment for you.
I definitely started training with Caleb Conley and George South, and when I realized that there was some, toughness in me, and I realized that this is something that I really enjoyed, and I just really enjoyed it, and I knew that it was something that I wasn't getting tired of, and I really just wanted to pursue it. It's that simple. It's not a very complicated answer. You have to really love the wrestling business to pursue something like this.
So when you started out training, I'm sure you had some expectations about how it would go and how much pain you would be in and what classes would be like. Now actually going through the training and being used to it for a couple of years now, how have those expectations changed? Because saying and doing are two totally different animals.
Yes. Well, now training is a lot more rigorous, a lot more harder, crazier. Training days are longer because my competition is more, it's way up there now. Now I have Shine, I have WSU, Queens of Combat. I'm up against girls that have been doing this much, much longer than I have. And I'm ready for, that pin now on them and not on me. So I can't slack now. This is a little more serious than just, a few shows locally, if you know what I mean.
Yes, certainly the intensity, certainly I can imagine it cranks up as you get more seasoned. And I imagine there's also a need to continue to rise to the occasion when you have many skilled opponents, as you've been saying. But as you're training and you're continuing to define who you are in the ring, both as a character and through technical means of the moves that you do, for those of you who may have not seen a lot of Amanda Rodriguez matches. Sorry. Can you tell me what it is about you that you wish to express in the ring to the fans and to your opponents?
I need people to understand that there is nothing but passion in me, and that I love wrestling, and there is something about the sport that I want to show people that I love to conquer. I love to conquer, and the competition is it's a very passionate business, and I think if you're not going to go into this with full passion, then you shouldn't be into it. And I'm just here to show people that I'm ready and that they better be prepared.
So, speaking of passion, I've had more than one special guest tell me that the amount of women who enter this industry with the right amount of passion and who truly want it are the exception and not the rule. So, in your opinion, what is the difference between someone who truly wants to be in this industry for the right reasons and someone who may have other motivations?
Someone who is in this for the right reason, someone with passion, someone with who is the exception, is someone who will do anything to prove themselves, to not themselves, but to their peers. I think if there is a woman who is just in there for the wrong reasons, there might be someone that they just want the glory and the fame, and that's not what I'm here for. I think if I want glory and fame, I go somewhere else. I go do something else. I don't beat myself up every weekend in the ring training for it. I wouldn't train and hit the ropes and get bruised up for no reason.
So some can argue that the standards for men versus women in the industry are a bit different because it is a male-dominated industry, and certainly looks and having a certain presence as opposed to how, let's say, a male competitor would look is a bit different. Has this sort of looks versus athleticism weigh-in kind of affected you positively or negatively? I mean, how do you look at the whole looks aspect of the industry? Do you think it's as important as people believe, or do you think that athleticism should take a bigger precedent? What's your opinion on that?
In regards to the men versus the females?
Yes.
Well, if you think about it, I think a lot of people expect the women to be good looking, but just a lot of women and men expect the guys to be good looking. This is a image-based industry, and we all are expected to be athletic. So just because there's a pretty girl doesn't mean there can't be a pretty guy, and vice versa. And just because there is an athletic, not-so-good-looking guy doesn't mean there can be an athletic, not-so-good-looking girl. We are all characters and athletes. So I think just because it's a male-dominated industry, it does not mean that there's no room for women. We are all equals.
So as the industry ages and the different trends take hold, and certainly wrestling plays off of pop culture a lot, especially due to social media nowadays, there's this shift of importance in the industry. You know, back in the day, let's say 30 or 20 years ago, managers used to be really in and hot, and you used to see, 5-6 managers per show. Now that they're more of a rare of occurrence. How do you pay attention to these trends, and how do you make sure that you're current with what you do, but you don't also forget the, let's say, old school mentality of your training? Because, for example, George South is all about old school, and you can definitely see that in his training.
Yes. Yes, and I am trained old school, but I also got that new school in my Caleb Connolly and Cedric Alexander training, if you know what I mean. And I always think, always take from the old school and always go with the new school. Always go with what's trendy, but always also try to invent something new. I'm a very creative person, and I love to think outside the box. And if you stay too trendy, that's so boring. I want people to look at me and say, well, that's interesting, because you're looking at me. You know, you're not saying, oh, she's doing the same thing as everybody else. You know, I don't want people to look at me and think I'm the same. I want people to look at me and think I'm different, even if they think it's ugly. I think that's a job of a artist or a job of a wrestler.
So if you were to define success in the eyes of a wrestler, and as far as, you know, making it, or as far as fulfilling what you want to fulfill, how would you define success? Because you'd be surprised at the amount of different answers that I get when I ask this type of question.
Right. Personally, for me, success, well, number one, I would love to make it to TV. I'm not going to lie. I watched WWE growing up, and that is one of my main goals. Japan would also be really great one day. So that is a form of success. Another answer for you that would be success to me is a very loyal fan base. I think a lot of wrestlers forget that is success, is having a loyal fan base. We are nothing without our fans. Like, how are you going to wrestle with no fans, whether you're on TV or not? If you're just on TV wrestling and you have no one like booing you and no one cheering you, what are you doing? You're doing nothing. You're just wrestling for no audience. And I cannot imagine wrestling for no audience. So I think my number one answer is making it, WWE for me, and having a loyal fan base.
So I'm sure you've learned a lot just in the 3 or so years that you've been in the industry. Hypothetically speaking, if you could go back in time and tell your new, fresh self, who is just entering the industry, something, what would you tell her? A piece of advice or something that you may have learned through experience but not intuition?
What I would tell myself when I first started, right now,
yes,
would train harder and don't be scared. Don't be scared to come out of your shell. I think that's the problem with a lot of new wrestlers, is they're too scared to go out, get out of their comfort zone. And I wish I had gotten out of my comfort zone earlier. And that's probably get out of my comfort zone and don't be scared. And I think that's an advice I would give anyone starting anything.
Now, as far as embracing your comfort zone and kind of going outside of that realm and sort of overcoming fear, how does one accomplish that? Is it more just getting experience in your particular craft? Is it some sort of specialized studying that you do aside from training? What was the keys for success for you in that regard?
For getting out of my comfort zone would be, it's part mental and it's part experience. It's a lot of self-talk. It's a lot about believing in yourself, and at the same time not giving, excuse my language, but not giving a damn about what people are going to think. Because when you create, you just have to let your ideas flow, and you just have to get out there, because you don't realize how comfortable you are outside of your comfort zone until you step out of it. So really, it's all in your mind. And until you experience it and you make yourself experience it, you're not going to know.
So you just commented on having the right amount of confidence, not letting other people's opinions get you down. You're in an industry that's, to be frank, quite judgmental about your performance and your look, and sometimes the politics can play into that. Was getting used to that environment of the backstage aspect of wrestling difficult for you, and how did you adjust to that?
Well, it was actually very easy for me to adjust, because thank the universe that the girls and the guys in wrestling are really, really great people. And I think they saw my good attitude and my willingness to learn. I kept my ears open and my mouth shut, and they took me in very well. So it was very easy to get comfortable, per se. And so when they see someone, wanting to learn, it makes it easier to learn.
As far as learning goes, certainly a lot of the training that you get in wrestling, you're encouraged to also study old wrestling tapes and just not the WWE in particular. Maybe you study NWA or the old WCW or whatever the case is. How do you go about studying? Do you look for something in particular from a match or a certain feud that you kind of take away from the competitor's presence or something else of that nature? What do you really look for when you study a match?
When I am studying, I'm looking for presence. I'm looking for facials. I'm looking for, I don't even know how to explain it, more than just a presence, the idea of a presence. I think a lot of people focus too much on moves and ideas on moves, and I'd rather tell the story and the emotion of what's going on.
So in your particular story, in your particular journey, you said that you want fans to see that you're passionate, that you want to win. When you're working as, say, a heel, is that still the case, or do you kind of flip around the components of that story and that sort of structure?
It's always the case. It doesn't matter how I'm wrestling. It's still wrestling. It's still passion. I still love it. I still want to win. I still want people to believe that I worked really hard to do what I'm doing right then and there.
So there certainly is a lot of new opportunities growing for women in the industry, certainly with all of the, like we said earlier, shine with the internet pay-per-views, and there's certainly a lot of different companies on the horizon. I think Global Force Wrestling, for example, has a great women's roster developing on its way as it continues to grow. But as far as a woman trying to make it in this industry, what's the first piece of advice that you give to aspiring female wrestlers?
Run. Don't do it. I'm just kidding. Biggest advice I could give them is never think you're good enough. Never think you're good enough. Never think that you know it all.
So how would you like to see yourself develop, given that answer, in the future, as far as your skill level or where you'd be in the coming years? I mean, you said never act like you are complete or know everything. So what would you like to know in the future about yourself and about your career?
I would like to see myself become more athletic. I would like to see myself become more creative, have more flow of ideas, and just see myself just grow. And I can't even pinpoint exactly what I want, because sometimes it happens just as it happens. And I can't even say what it is. And you just have to let it flow and let it happen as the years go by, as training goes by, as each show and each match goes by.
Mm-hmm. And certainly when you're going through your training and trying out different match types and have different opponents, I'm sure your moveset and repertoire expands and sort of assimilate to the situation. And certainly you can never really be truly original in the industry, because your ideas for moves and gimmicks are going to come from somewhere. But what is the difference to you, and how would you define the difference of imitation versus emulation? In other words, how do you make sure that you're not imitating somebody, but you're also paying homage to that person, or wrestler, rather?
Imitating is literally being a straight copycat and being unoriginal with that idea. I think if you're emulating someone and you want to pay homage to someone, you take an idea that once was, you twist it a little bit, you make it your own, and you get creative with it. I think as long as you make it your own and twist it a little bit, it's new again, as long as you don't do exactly what was already done.
So certainly you said earlier that you want a very strong and loyal fan base. So what is it that, attracts you to that idea? And in other words, if a fan doesn't really know you or know what you're about, kind of what would you do to sell yourself to them as far as be a part of my loyal fan base?
This is what I say. First of all, to love me, you have to love women's wrestling. If you don't love women's wrestling, I do not expect you to love me. And if you love women's wrestling and you want to love me, come to my shows, buy my DVDs, buy other women's DVDs, support it. And just, I can't tell a fan to love me. You just have to watch my work. And from there, they can make their own decision. I can't force someone to love me,
Certainly. Although we'd certainly like to, of course, unless you're like someone like Donald Trump, you can't buy people out. So, before we wrap up and get to how people can contact you, I think this is my most favorite question to ask during interviews, and also the most difficult. So brace yourself. If you could sum up your experience as a professional wrestler using just one word, what would that one word be?
Sum up my experience?
Yes, one word.
Humbling.
So, certainly, I've gotten a lot of interesting answers with that question. And just as a quick follow-up, if you could sum up your experience using some sort of inspirational quote or some piece of advice that you've been given that you really carry with you, what would that be?
Wow, that was a good one. You really got me with that one. To sum up my experience, I don't really know if I have an exact quote or anything like that, but going back to the word humbling, the fact that I love this business so much and I feel so honored to be on the shows that I'm on and to work with the ladies that I work with and to have them show me what they know and to work with the likes of Mickie James, Daphne, and all them, it's just straight humbling. I am so grateful. I think 12-year-old Amanda Rodriguez she would not believe it that adult Amanda would be here right now.
So I know you're very active on social media, and of course you have different things that fans can buy, and you can be contacted for any shows or appearances, bookings, autograph signings, whatever else. How can they do that officially so that they know where to go?
On my Twitter and Instagram, and I also now have a Periscope. The tag is @AmandaXC as in cat R. So AmandaXCR.
Well, fantastic, and I'll be sure to post all the links and everything when we post the interview. But I just want to thank you so much for your time, Amanda, and it sounds like you certainly have the passion to make it as far as you want to go in the industry. So I wish you all the best of luck, and I thank you once again for joining me.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thanks to everyone else for tuning in. Be sure to check out www.wrestling-divaz.webs.com, and that's divas with a Z, divaz.webs.com for more information and content. And be sure to follow the site on Twitter at Wrestling Divaz, again with the Z at the end, for all the latest updates.